Namaste everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. We are starting with the 35th SLEvA webinar. The theme for this webinar is Institutionalization of Evaluation, a Global Perspective. This seminar is being organized along with the Promoting National Evaluation Policies and Systems theme of the Asia Pacific Regional Evaluation Strategy, which also conducts an annual event every year in December, consultation with all the countries in the region. As part of our efforts, we have started these webinars where we talk about different concepts related to national evaluation policies and systems and institutionalization with the participants. So this is such second webinar that we are organizing in this year. I'm your moderator for the day, Yatin Diwakar. I'm also co-lead at the Promoting NEPS team and co-lead at EvalYouth Asia and EvalYouth India. For the audience, there are some common reminders. As always, we request you to keep your microphone muted, videos disabled, so that the internet bandwidth and event quality is preserved for everyone. If you have any questions and concerns, please leave them in the chat bar. We will be going through the chat and recording your questions and asking them at the end of the session. Professor Reinhard Stockmann, who is our presenter for the day, will first present his presentation, then take up all the questions together at the end. For the opening remarks, I invite Hasithi Samarasinghe. She is also co-leader at EvalYouth Sri Lanka and EvalYouth Asia. And she also leads the Asia Pacific Communication Hub and is an independent evaluation consultant. Hasithi, please.
Can you hear me, Yatin? Yatin, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let me start. Thank you, Yatin. If we look into the institutionalization, producing a quality evaluation holds the organizations accountable, and it improves the organizational learning and decision making. And for that, evaluation capacity building through introducing evaluation culture and practices at the organization level. In other words, if I say in building institutional capacity is mandatory. And of course, ultimately, this institutionalization will speed up the process of professionalization of evaluation as well. In this process, having an idea about historical and current development across all the countries is very important. Based on that, we can identify the key driving forces of development of evaluation for each country, each continent, and the globe as a whole. So from 35th SLEvA webinar, we decided to encourage a discussion on this and give some thought-provoking ideas. For that, we have Professor Reinhard Stockmann joining with us today, the best resource person that you can think of for such discussion. Thank you, Professor, for joining with us today and agreeing to share your wisdom. And of course, would like to invite our speakers as well as our participants too. Hope you all will have a fruitful discussion today. Yatin, over to you.
Thank you, Hasithi. That was a pleasant introduction. Now we will have Professor Dr. Reinhard Stockmann taking the stage. He is a professor of sociology at Saarland University. He is also the founder and director of the Center for Evaluation and executive editor for the German Zeitschrift für Evaluation magazine. And as we know, he is also one of the lead authors of the Evaluation Globe studies, which are coming up, about which he will speak more in his presentation. So without taking much time, I will request her to start with his presentation. Professor. You are muted, please also unmute. Yes, the presentation is visible, but you are muted, sir.
Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
I can see it, okay. Okay, then Hasithi, thank you very much for this kind introduction. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present our research project about the institutionalization of evaluation in hopefully global perspective. And well, how did we start it? So actually it was the observation of, on one side, of a worldwide evaluation boom. So this development goes hand in hand with the growing supply of evaluation services, with the development of evaluation approaches, theories, and methodologies on one side. And on the other side, we also can observe a worldwide professionalization process. So more and more WOPEs, standards are creating. We have academic courses offered and things like that. So you can say there is a global professionalization, but actually it's not clear what causes what. So that is still an open question. And in contrast to that development, I must say that there's only little research about evaluation. It's not very widespread. Maybe this is the case because it's very difficult to get money for such a task. It's more easy to get money for developing new evaluation approaches, to pilot them, for developing courses and things like that. But for research on evaluation, that is very difficult to get money. And I think that's the reason that there is so little research about the research of evaluation, how evaluation has developed. And must say from our worldwide experience and well, also out of the analysis of the literature and the documents, we have noticed following. So teaching and research in evaluation is very much fixed on the developments in North America and to a lesser extent to Europe. But this is where the focus is on. And little is known on the degree of institutionalization in evaluation worldwide. And we also, if we have some knowledge about it, then this focuses on North America and on the European countries. And this becomes especially clear if you have a look at the literature, especially the International Atlas of Evaluation. It's a pioneering work of Ruberist and Sandal. And if you have a look at this book, then you will see that the case studies cover 12 European countries, 2 from North America, 3 from Asia, 1 from Africa, and none from Latin America and the Caribbean. And so we concluded, after reviewing the literature and the documents, that there is a really need for a global perspective. And so we said our research objectives should be, would like to have a global description of the institutionalization of evaluation in selected countries from all continents. We want to make a comparative analysis of the historical and current development across all countries and continents. And we would like to identify the driving forces behind this development. And yeah, so that is how it started. And well, you will be not surprised that we started with Europe to analyze the country at the institutionalization of evaluation in Europe, because yeah, we know best about Europe or about our own countries. But then the book was published in 2020. And then in our second publication, our second volume was about Americas, that means North and Latin America. It was published this year, 22. And our volume about Asia Pacific will be published next year. And then the Africa volume is in preparation and will hopefully be published in 24. So that's about the forward, the introduction, how all this came. And my presentation now is organized like that. First, I will tell you a little bit about the theoretical and methodological approach of our research. Then I will tell you a little bit about the country selection and the data collection methods we have used. Then I will talk about the institutionalization of evaluation in 3 systems: the political system, the social system, and the professionalization system. Then I will discuss some challenges evaluation is faced, what are the driving forces behind these developments, and I will end up with some conclusions. So I want to say only very little about the theoretical approach, because that's mostly the most boring part, even if this is a very important part. But if you are much more interested in our theoretical approach, I can tell you a little bit more than in the discussion. So just so far, we based our theoretical approach on the theoretical reflections of tradition of the modernization theory, as well as the theory of social differentiation, according to which various functional subsystems are formed in order to be able to process social tasks more effectively and more efficiently. So, but what the problem is with these approaches is that in the sociological literature, there is no consensus on the question which subsystems define the features of a society and should therefore be analyzed. So which are the most important subsystems, because there are a lot. But if it comes to evaluation, then I think it is not so difficult to decide which subsystems should have a high priority, because evaluation as an applied scientific discipline is important to produce relevant information for steering for the management of the political subsystem. And that is the reason why we focused on, beside the others, which I will explain later, that we firstly focused on the political system. And so what are we interested in? So in the political system, you see here on the slide, is about the institutional structures and processes in evaluation. And so we were interested in questions like, to what extent are the national or sectoral laws and regulations requiring evaluations? To what extent are evaluations embedded within parliamentary structures? To what extent are there special organizational evaluation units in government organizations, and how are evaluations organized, which evaluations are carried out by whom and with which methods and so on, and how intensively is evaluated are the evaluations in different sectors. And beside that, we said, well, if it comes to evaluation, then also the civil society is very much important, because in some way it's the counterpart of the political system. Because especially I would say in a democratic society, the civil society is the counterpart of the political system, because actually they should control the political system. The civil society should control the political system. And a second very important issue is that the social system formulates specific interests and needs and addresses it to the political system. So what makes it more difficult than analyzing the political system at the social system is, has not, let's say, clear codified legal rules and sanctions. The social system is very heterogeneous. And so it was not so easy as in the political system to decide which questions are most important. We decided for the ones here, you can read here. So we asked to what extent and for what and how do civil society organizations themselves use evaluations to achieve their goals? To what extent is evaluation at all perceived by the public? And to what extent are evaluation results discussed, especially in a dialogue with the political system? To what extent are citizens or civil society organizations actively involved in evaluations? That means, how do they participate in evaluations? And at the end, yeah, is there any demand for evaluations which is formulated through the social system in the direction of the political system? And if it comes to the system of professions, then I must say this is now more the demand side of this analysis. Yeah, say, okay, there's the political system, the social system, they could ask for evaluation. And on the other side, if this is the supply side, on the other side, what is the demand side doing? And the demand side is the system of professions. And for here we said it's important to see if there are academic courses in the field of evaluation, right? Is there academic training? Are there scientific journals or platforms? Are there professional organizations like WOPIs? And do professional standards exist? So this actually is the frame in which we organized our research. Also, a few words about the methodological approach. And the first question actually was, okay, what are the countries we are interested in, and which countries should be included in our analysis? And for this, we made a first country study, to find out in which countries does evaluation play a significant role. It does not make sense to include countries where evaluation does not play any role. Then no of these questions could be answered, because they say no, there is nothing. So it only makes sense to include countries where evaluation has really a significant relevance. And after that, after we have analyzed the countries with a literature review and documents review, then we selected and approached potential authors. That was actually done in the same step. If you look what literature does exist, then you find out who has written about this. And of course, we used also our network. We know some people in the world who are experts in their field, and so we approach these people. And then we asked these authors, identified authors, to write case studies on their country. And what was difficult maybe for them is that the authors were obliged to use an analysis grid, which we have derived from these theoretical and methodological considerations. And parallel to the analysis of the literature and the documents and the statistics, we asked them to do some interviews if there are some places or some topics which they cannot answer according their own experience or out of the analysis of the literature. So they were asked to do some interviews additionally. Well, and then what was, we'll say, most important for us, that the authors really accept this, let's say, this corset of the analysis grid. Otherwise, there would have been no comparability between the case studies, and for that we all discuss on the same level or using the same terms let's say that we use the same terms in the same understanding. We also prepared a glossary to clarify the terms and said, okay, if you talk about evaluation, then please use this definition and not other definition, because otherwise also performance audit, for example, would be maybe understood as an evaluation, but it's different. And then at the end, we used some feedback loops to see if they really followed our analysis grid, where there are open places, questions not answered, and then we asked them again, please, could you say something this or that that's missing? And so at the end, I think we were quite satisfied in all the three continents, in Europe, in Americas, and in Asia, with the case studies we have. So they're really comprehensive and comparable. So the countries, just to give you an overview, which countries we have analyzed, these are the 16 countries in Europe. I think we have not to go through this list here in detail, just to give you an impression. These are the countries in Americas, as I said, that's the United States and Canada and Mexico in the north. And then in South America, you see here there's a list of countries. So we covered the most parts of North and Latin America. And maybe you're most interested in the countries we have selected for Asia Pacific, I always have to say. So that's Australia, that's Bangladesh, that's the People's Republic of China, India, Japan, Korea, Nepal, Pakistan, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Taiwan. So actually also New Zealand was included in this list, but it was not able, also after long discussions and emails to find authors from New Zealand who were willing to follow our evaluation grid. Okay, so that's an overview. And so first of all, now have a look at the political system. And the political system, first about the results in Europe. Let's have a look at the institutionalization of evaluation in the political system in Europe. And there you can say evaluation is hardly anchored in legislation. There are only 3 countries in Europe where there are general national laws requiring the use of evaluation. That's Switzerland, France, and the Netherlands. We have 7 more countries where they have national regulations and decrees. That means not on the level of laws, but on the level of national regulations. Then thirdly, with regard to the organizational embedding, it must be said that internal evaluation units in some ministries or autonomous evaluation institutions have been set up in individual countries. In some countries, national audit offices play an important role for the evaluation of the political system. And in the most countries in Europe, we have evaluated the role of parliaments in the field of evaluation is very low, and that is a pity, because actually the parliament has at least two possibilities to engage with evaluation. On one side, it's their lawmaking power. They have the ability to enact evaluation in laws, and on the other side, of course, they can use evaluation for their internal discussions, as it means in the sense of users of evaluation results. And in some countries, it's also possible that they initiate or even directly commission evaluations, but that's very rare in Europe. If we look at the sectors, the sectoral spread, we must say that evaluations, I'm still talking about Europe, are often performed in the educational sector, development cooperation, science, innovation, health, labor market, employment and economy, social affairs, environment, and urban and regional planning. But very, very seldom in the field of defense, foreign policy, culture, justice, home affairs, and agriculture. So, and now the last one, the scope of evaluation and practice, and that means, yeah, if you measure the intensity and the frequency by which evaluations are carried out, it can be seen that it is relatively high in only 7 of these 16 European countries. And now the interesting thing is, if you look at these 2 dimensions we have used in the political system, the institutionalization of evaluation on one side and the use of evaluation. And if you see the intercorrelation of these both dimensions, then you see that we actually can identify special groups. So, for example, the champions are the Netherlands and Switzerland, where they have a very high degree of institutionalization and a very high degree of the use of evaluation. Then very close to these 2 ones are Finland and Germany, and then there's some countries in between. But we also, you see, we have some countries where there is very little institutionalization of evaluation. That's in Italy, in Poland, in Portugal, in Romania, and at the same time, yeah, you can say nearly no use of evaluation. And that means that actually the higher the institutionalization degree, the higher is the level of use. Yeah, that is, I think it's a very interesting result. That means in countries without such international, institutional frameworks, the implementation of evaluation is lagging far behind. But however, this cross-sectional analysis also shows that the mere existence of relevant regulations in itself is not sufficient for ensuring comprehensive evaluation practice. And now let's have a picture, have a view on the picture of the Americas. And here I must say, to the political system compared with Europe, almost all countries have national legal regulations on evaluation. That's a big difference. Nearly all countries have national regulation on evaluation, and all countries have national degrees. That's really a difference to Europe, to European countries. And in all countries, except Bolivia, there are organizational evaluation units, but evaluation hardly plays a role in the audit offices. It's a difference also to the European results. And if you have a look at the use parameters, yeah, then we find a very similar picture if we look at the parliaments, because only 3 of the 11 countries there, the parliament is engaged in evaluation, very similar to Europe. And if you have a look at the sectoral spread, meaning in how many sectors is evaluation practice, it's much lower than in Europe. And this is also true for the issue of the intensity or the scope of evaluation. And then again, if we look at this interrelation between institutionalization and use, we see this picture. We have 2 champions, the United States and Canada, high institutionalization rate, high rate of use. We have in between here some countries from Latin America, also with just a very high institutionalization rate and use rate. And then again, some countries with very, very low rate of use, but with some institutionalization degree. And again, you can say, if you have a look at this, you can say again, well, this looks a little bit similar to the European picture. That means that this correlation between these 2 dimensions confirms the thesis already established for Europe. The more institutionalization, the more use, but you must say it is not an automatical mechanism. It is necessary but not sufficient. Yeah, in this relation. So if it comes to Asia Pacific, I'm sorry, I cannot present you a similar picture because this is still work in progress, and we are working now on the synthesis, but the authors of our case studies, they don't know about the results, so I cannot present you in the moment the results before we have sent our synthesis to our authors of the case studies for validation. But I can tell you a few observations what we have done. So what we found out is that there is a very low institutionalization level. That means there are hardly any national regulations on evaluation, and this also applies for the existence of national degrees. And in most countries, evaluation is centrally organized. In some, it's also decentralized organized. But in general, there is a relatively low organizational embedding of evaluation, and the audit offices, they do not carry out evaluations at all. And if we look at the use level, we must say the use level is also quite low. That is not a topic in Parliament. The sectoral spread, yeah, meaning in how many sectors or policy fields is evaluation practice, is quite low, and this is also true for the scope of evaluation. And what is also very much astonishing and different from the picture of Europe and the picture of Americas is that there are no champions, meaning there are countries with a very high institutionalization grade and with a high use profile. This is missing in Asia, in Pacific Asia. And I think that is also a very, very important result of our study, because actually you couldn't say that in comparison to Europe and Americas, the Asia Pacific region has the largest backlog demand within the political system. So let's have a look at the other two systems in a very short way because of our time. I just want to give you an impression, and that is also, I would say, a quite astonishing result, because what you read here is the result not only for Asia, it's the result for Europe, Americas, and Asia Pacific. And that is really astonishing if you think about the differences, the cultural, the social, the political, the economical, all the differences between the countries in one continent, and then, of course, much bigger between the continents. That is a very uniform picture, because it's true for the most, I must say, not for all, but for the most countries of all the three continents we have investigated. That means in the social system, the institutionalization of the use of evaluation is very low. That means civil society organizations very seldom use evaluation for their own use, yeah, and they don't use it actually, or let's say no barely any use of evaluations or dialogue between civil society and the governments or the state, and there's a very, very little participation in evaluations. And secondly, the public perception is very low. It doesn't matter if you look at Asia, if you look at Europe, or if you look at Latin America. I would say, well, maybe in North America it's a little bit different, but in general, the public perception of evaluation is very low. There's little knowledge about evaluation in the societies. The media report very selectively. So if there is something they can scandalize, then they do it. But there's not a permanent, continuously report about evaluations in the media. And the positive aspect is that the availability of evaluation reports is high in Europe, it's medium in Americas, but again, it's low in Asia. And if you look at the demand by civil societies, so that there are civil societies beside the VOPs, of course, that are saying, well, we need evaluation, so do more evaluations, and we put pressure on that issue that the political system will do more evaluations and make this evaluation transparent. Nothing to see there. There is no demand created by the social society or by the social system. If there is a demand, then it's mostly triggered by the state. And so if you want to have money from us, the government, then evaluation is mandatory. And then that's the reason why civil society organizations are using evaluations, but not out of an intrinsically motivated insight. Yeah, a short view also to the professionalization system. And you see here, I'm sorry, here it's right. Here it's right. You see in, let's say, in half of the countries, in Europe, 8 of 16, the university programs are existing. All the countries have VOPs. Only very few, you see Germany, Spain, and UK, they have their own scientific journals, evaluation journals, right? And a few of them have national standards, only 2, and 4 more, they have ethical codes. If we have a look at the Americas, you see a similar picture, lots of university programs, half of the countries have one. Many countries have a VOP, and only a few have scientific journals or their own evaluation standards. I'm sorry, I can't give you figures about Asia Pacific because this is still work in progress and I do not have these figures here in the moment. Beside that, what's again an absolutely interesting finding, I think, is that the development on the supply side is almost independent from the one on the demand side. That means you can find countries with well-developed institutions for evaluation in the political system, but no adequate institutions in the system of professions, and the other way around. Good established evaluation in the system of professions with almost no institutionalized use in the political or social system. That is really, I think, very astonishing, because you could think if there is really a demand for evaluation, yeah, then there should be also some supply for it. But it's not like that. So it's not really interrelated, and this is a really astonishing result which has to be investigated further. We're coming to the next point. That's the institutionalization, that is about the driving forces of the institutionalization of evaluation. So what is behind all that? And again, it's astonishing that despite the enormous political, economic, social, and cultural differences between Europe, Americas, and Asia, that there is a clearly identifiable force in the political system, what triggered the evaluation development. And these are the efforts to modernize and rationalize administration. So actually there are two routes. That's on one side, this new public management or results-based outcome management, however it's called, on one side, and on the other side, it's coming more from the financial side, the planning, programming, and budgeting systems, or that so-called results-based budgeting. And these are the two routes motivating, triggering the development of institutionalization of evaluation. So if the roots are the roots which originate in the financial management, are coupled with the intention of improving the state's financial control. And that is that there are planning, programming, and budgeting systems have been developed for this purpose. And the second source was the idea to improve the performance and the process of the service sector, right? There was the idea with new public management and with these concepts that the private sector is better organized and that the administrative sector, the public sector, should learn from the private sector to make the public sector more efficient, more effective. What? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I would say these two forces have driven the development of evaluation in all the three continents. And I think this is also, again, a quite astonishing factor, that this uniformity, that you say, well, this is really the driving force you can find in all the three continents, in the most countries of these three continents. And there, let's say, additional factors. In Europe, the EU, the European Union, is a very important driving force, because as a country, you can get only money from the EU as the so-called structural funds if you agree in evaluating these programs. And so there was a strong force with this mandatory evaluations, was a strong force to establish as such monitoring and evaluation systems. Of course, there is not a similar actor in Latin America and in Asia, but there are other important drivers, and that is on one side the donor policies. So they practice evaluation in their funding, and then it was regular to do evaluations, and some governments in the countries learn out of that and say, oh, look, that's a good idea. Why shouldn't we do it also in other policies, not only in the field of development cooperation? And secondly, there was also a strong force by here in Latin America by the so-called CLEAR centers, by IEG, the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank. In Asia, more by UNICEF and UNDP, playing a similar role and are actively promoting the and supporting the establishment of monitoring and evaluation systems. And what's new was the first time that it was mentioned in the case studies of Asia, that in some of the case studies it was said that the monitoring and evaluation system for supervising the SDGs is also a strong driver to use monitoring and evaluation, or at least to make this issue important for the political system, especially the political system. Okay, now let's come to some challenges. So I want to pick out just a few of them, and one of the challenges I think we are faced is that the evaluation activities are primarily limited to the political system. And I think there's a risk that evaluation is increasingly interpreted as a kind of technology of the bureaucracy, turning in a rigid routine, involving largely standardized and streamlined processes. And this is also, I think, a risk if evaluation is perceived as an annoying duty or even as a threat, then a threat that leads maybe to negative sanctions. Of course, then the evaluation concept will not get popular. On the other side, I would say evaluation is also faced with the inherent challenge that it is not a protected procedure. So evaluation can be carried out by anyone who says, I'm an evaluator. And of course, this has some consequences for the quality of evaluations. And on the other side, evaluation is also undermined by mixing evaluation with other tools, for example, with concepts like audit, accreditation, quality assurance, or some countries also say that there is a challenge by organizational consulting. That means that there is a risk that evaluation loses its distinct profile. So that's what's really, let's say, the core of evaluation, so that this instrument then no longer fulfills its actual task of collecting, analyzing, assessing data, using empirical methods independently and in accordance with scientific standards. Well, in some countries and in their civil societies, there's also a high degree of mistrust. They say, well, that's an instrument, it's an activity for control by the government. So that's the reason that we do not like evaluation. That's another challenge, I think, we are faced beside the lack of interest by the civil society in general. And maybe because of that, there is a limited understanding of the potential and the possibilities or the possible applications offered by evaluation. People do not know very much about the potential of evaluation, for what they could use, or civil society organizations could use evaluation. Hence the same, I think, with the parliaments. And to mention the last one here on the top, well, that is, how can evaluation play an important role in a world where there is a growing belief in alternative facts, and the alternative facts do not require empirical evidence, but that's actually what evaluation is doing. Evaluation is producing empirical evidence, makes this evidence public, makes it transparent, and with this puts pressure onto the government to legitimize what they are doing. But if you believe only in alternative facts, then what is then with disciplines such as evaluation, which produce empirically proven facts with scientific thoroughness? I think these disciplines will face hard times. Okay, coming to an end. Even so, the challenges are enormous. I'm optimistic about the future of evaluation. The discussion about the need for evaluation has grown strongly in recent years, and there have been great successes worldwide. I think that the VOPs can make an important contribution to the further development of evaluation. They can, and I would say they must, promote evaluation more strongly. And also, I would say they have to act as lobbyists of evaluation. If we, as, let's say, convinced evaluators, do not do this, who else should do it? So I think there is a lot to do. So let's go and do it. Thank you very much for listening. I don't know if I'm in time, but that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Stockmann. So we have some questions in the chat. I would like to take them up. Carlos Javier came up with the first question. He says that while the existence of national evaluation policy does not mean that all government sectors have the same capacities to perform evaluation functions, how can we improve sectoral capacities?
Sectoral capacities. Improve sectoral capacities, right? Yeah, of course. I think what's most important is training. Actually, it's not only training. What we have to do, I think, is really to influence different levels. So, of course, training is very important if you want to establish units in the field of evaluation, let's say in ministries or in other public institutions, of course, you need training that the people know about the potential of evaluation and how to deal with evaluation. But that is our experience for many, many courses, because we always started on, let's say, on the lowest level, on the level of people who are conducting evaluation. And our experience was, after giving them these lectures, they said, oh, now we know how important evaluation is, how to conduct an evaluation, but we are not the ones who decide. And so we climbed up the ladder in the hierarchy and said, okay, that's true. So now we have to start with some courses, some training for middle and upper management, shorter ones. They are not conducting evaluations, but they are commissioning evaluations. So we have to train them to tell them, look, how can you use evaluation for improving your work? And so we have done 3-day, 4-day courses for them on this level. And these people at the end of the course said, well, now we understood why we should use evaluation for our work, but we are not the ones who decide. I said, okay, so we have to go up to the upper level. We have to go to the heads of the ministry, to the heads of an institution, to explain them why it is necessary to train the people, why it is necessary to have an evaluation plan, why a budget for evaluations are necessary. So I think if you really want to establish monitoring and evaluation systems in ministries or other institutions, you have you have to influence, or you have to promote evaluation on different levels in such an institution. Otherwise, it will not work. It will not be sustainable. It's okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So there are also some other questions. One more question from Carlo is that, to what extent does institutionalization of evaluation depend more on the demand side than the supply side?
Can you repeat that? It's a line. It's very hard to, acoustically to understand.
Yes. So basically, you mentioned that demand and supply of evaluation are decoupled.
Right.
But Carlos wants to understand what is more important. How is demand side more important for institutionalization or supply side?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say. So this is just, as I said, that's a very important observation. Yeah, that it is like that, and we have been very surprised about that, because we thought, okay, if there is a demand, so people, institutions are asking for evaluations, then the other side, the professionalization system, so let's say the VOPs, they offer courses, the university establish university programs and so on, to satisfy the needs of the supply side. But actually this does not happen like this. I don't know why. And on the other side, I think it has a lot to do with personal initiatives. So if you look at the side of the universities, we see there is a lot of fluctuation. So there are people in a university, or there are people in VOPs, they're very, very active. And they say, let us start with an academic program, with a further educational program, and they start with it. Yeah. And then they hope to influence others. That means the supply side, the institutions that they will use, the master students and so on for the evaluation purposes. But if there is not really a need, no understanding on the political side or in the social system, they will not give them a job. So then that means after a few years, these programs collapse. And that is what we really can observe in many, many countries. And then maybe a few years later, at another university, a different university with different people, they start an initiative again. So I would say both is not working well, because if there is a supply, but nobody is fulfilling the needs of the supply side, there is a problem, because they will get low quality evaluations. Or what we see in many, many developing countries is exactly the situation. No? The donors are looking for well-experienced evaluators. Then they look at the local market. Then they say, oh, they are not people with all these competencies we are looking for. And so what they are doing, they engage again people from the north, from the west, or from wherever, right? And they do nothing or very less. And that is also an observation, I would say, of the last 20, 30 years. They do little, yeah, to train systematically people in developing countries to fill this role. There are only a few programs, you know, IPTED, where I'm head of, is such an international program where we train people in this field. So that's an obstacle. And the other side, if there are very well motivated people, and there are a lot at universities and in VOPs, and say that's so an important issue. Yeah, we have to qualify people. But if then on the other side, in the ministries and with the civil society organization, there is no interest in using evaluation competence, it also could not work. So they produce some people in really experts with a master degree in evaluation maybe, and then nobody's asking for their qualifications. Yeah, then this is also then a pity. So actually, what would be vital is really to plan these processes that they go hand in hand. But this is actually not working like that. And no, I do not know not one country where there is such a master plan to say, look, as we in the future we will have a need in evaluation. Please, universities, VOPs, that's your task to produce people with such competencies.
So a couple of our audience members are interested in what is happening in Africa. So if you can just give a brief.
Africa, I can't say anything because that is where now the case studies are produced. So I hope that the authors of these case studies, that they are working hard, but I haven't any result in the moment about Africa.
So hopefully in a year or two, we will have results on Africa.
No, not in October. So
next year, hopefully next
year. Yeah. No, I hope so. Yeah. So the plan is actually that we now finalize the Asian Pacific volume, and then at the beginning of next year, we hope that we have all the case studies from Africa. So in the middle of the year, we will start to do our synthesis. But I think all people who have done such kind of research or published a book with a lot of authors, they know you can only publish the book after receiving the last case study and not before. So if you have 99% could be on time, if there is 1% not delivering in the right time, you cannot publish the book. So that's always is always a problem.
So there are a couple of other questions in the chat, but I feel somewhere in your talk you have already answered them. I also had some personal questions, about 8 or 10 of them, which I'm keeping aside right now because we are short of time. The session was pretty interesting. I now request Samandar, who is co-leader for our Promoting NEPS team and founder chairman of Afghan Evaluation Society, to come forward for the vote of thanks and closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Yatin. Hello, everyone. I learned a lot. Thank you to Professor Stockmann for presenting on this very important topic of institutionalizing evaluation. As Professor Stockmann said, the better institutionalization or the higher institutionalization, the higher the utility or use of an evaluation. So that is why institutionalization actually matters. So it's part of that professionalization journey to professionalize or standardize evaluation, so that we value and appreciate evaluation in our society, in organizations that we work, in the government, in civil society. So when everybody talks about it, that is when everybody demands, when we supply quality evaluations, that is institutionalization. When There is culture, value for evaluation, and it's used to improve policy making. It's used to make important decisions. I think then we can see that evaluation has been professionalized. Once again, thank you to Professor Stockmann, to Yatin for moderating, Hasithi, and all the team for organizing such a great session on institutionalization of evaluation. And this was the 35th SLEvA webinar on institutionalization. Thank you so much, everyone. Over to you, Hasithi and Yatin.
Thank you, Samandar. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you again in our next month's webinar on 16th of November on the evaluation of energy programs and policies, strengthening value of evaluation in the Asia Pacific region. Our speaker will be Dr. Edward Wine, and our moderator will be Sakir Mose, joining from Asia Pacific, EvalYouth Pacific. So looking forward to seeing you all of there. And also, hopefully within a month, we will be publishing our promoting NEP's team report, status report for Asia Pacific region, which will also give a view of some 14-15 countries, what is happening in them in field of institutionalization of evaluation recently in the last 1 year. And in December, I hope to see all of you again during our regional dialogue on NEPs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Stockmann.
Okay, so hopefully see you in a few weeks or months in Sri
Yes.
Lanka.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay, have a
Thank
good
you very
time.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Professor, I will send you my questions separately.
I think
Yes,
he just left.
yeah.
I think you can email him.
Yes, I will be.